to order, and welcome. Our minutes, we have two sets of minutes here. Any changes to minutes?
No, I'll make a motion. We approve the minutes.
Well, I have one.
You have one?
On the June 18, on the second page where it was, the mayor was speaking, and it was like no cost shifting, not cost shifting or burden shifting.
Yeah.
So make that correction to the minutes. And Marquisha, I've already talked about that.
I second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Good to see you. No public comment. And so, Bobby, we're going to turn this over to you.
Thank you, and appreciate everybody being here today for the meeting. I guess the, what is it, item 4A, budget update. I just wanted to comment publicly and recognize this committee for your work on the budget. I think you met at least three times that I can remember.
Nice to be past that.
It is, but it was, I think the budget committee was a good venue to surface the budget challenges that we had, and I think it contributed to ultimately the council being able to vote for the budget. And so the budget passed. We submitted the budget in a timely manner to the comptroller's office, so we're in good shape on that. So,
I noticed that there were some cities around us that did not get theirs submitted.
Some are still working, I think.
yeah.
So the world doesn't end if you don't have it.
So we're fine. We, let's see, I think you actually have 15 days, I believe, after it's adopted, and we got ours in Tuesday or Wednesday of the next week after council met on Thursday. So
Cool.
we're in good shape on that. So I'll commend the budget committee.
Well, thank you for your part.
I think the next item is just a quick,
Scott.
update on the revenues. Obviously, we just have the month of July so far, but y'all need one more. But you can see from the report that while it is only 1 month, it's good to start the month with strong numbers. I would point out on JEA the way that works. Of course, it's a formula, and it's a quite involved calculation, but they update theirs October of each year, right? So what you see July of this year was updated back during the fall, so it's going to be more than what last July was. Sales tax. I'm just, just as a reminder, what you see on here are the cash receipts, right? So this would be sales tax that was collected 60 days ago over the last couple of months, and we're off to some good numbers on sales tax. City stickers, it'll fluctuate from month to month, but it looks solid as well. State sales tax up slightly above the same month last year, as is hotel motel tax. So any questions?
It seems that every one of these items is above the end of the fiscal year.
Above the same month last year. So
Of June 24,
Both end of the fiscal year.
July.
and-
Yeah, so it's like we're,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
which is healthy.
I see what you're saying now, June, yeah. Of course, there is some seasonality in all of it, on the sales tax and stuff, but it's good to see that number, some growth in that number, so.
So what's the attributing factor for the February numbers for local sales tax and then the state sales tax being significantly higher?
Christmas.
Yeah,
Christmas, so it's 60
two
days
month
behind.
lag, yeah, right.
So if it's 2 months behind, would, like the Miss Tennessee, Miss America that we have, would that create such a?
That would be, this would be,
This would be
May.
May,
May,
June,
okay.
yeah, May.
That is nice.
Yeah.
So they said July was a monster month too, we should expect.
good.
we'll,
Mhm.
So what, September should be?
yeah, we'll hope this continues, 'cause this would exceed our budget. Specifically the sales tax, we budget kind of flat for sales tax.
Mhm.
Okay, that's good news. The next item on the agenda, you want me to just continue?
Please.
Frank? Okay. Has to do with a potential debt issue update, and, I'm gonna pass this around. Four going that way. Okay. You will recall that, the city council, I guess, I'm not sure what meeting it was, Mayor, maybe you can help me remember.
One of those
One of those meetings, yeah. In order to, provide hopefully some funding for some capital investments this next year there was no funding in the approved budget for it. As well as the idea was that, through a debt issue, the opportunity might provide itself to reimburse the general fund for the transfer that's in the budget anyway. It's in the budget for the transfer from the general fund to the capital outlay fund. We were asked to begin the process of, looking at a potential, debt issue. So we've done some work on this. I just want to provide you a quick update of, kind of where we are and the timeline and just some other basic information. So PFM, the first several slides in this deck, would be some information about PFM. They're a financial advisory firm. If you flip over on page 4, and by the way, the city's, I think historically, I know the one bond issue that we've done since I've been here, we elected to use a financial advisory firm. I think that's a wise decision, to do that. I think historically the city's done that. Now, when we've issued some capital outlay notes, which are, doesn't rise to the level necessarily of having to use a financial advisory firm for that. But PFM is the firm that we used back in 2019, so they are in fact familiar, quite familiar actually, with the city. And you can see this firm was founded back in 1975 and kind of founded on the belief that governments and public entities need an independent advice when you consider, a sizable debt issue. There's another slide on page 5. You can look at that. They're represented. They've got offices all over the country, and they're one of recognized, I'll say that way, financial advisors for municipal debt and other type of governmental debt across the country. They have an office in Memphis. That's the office that we've used before. They promote themselves as, have national presence with local expertise. In one measurement, they've been ranked the #1 financial advisor for the last 29 years in the public financial industry, but that basically is based on the amount of transactions that they had, right? So I think the thinking is if they are participants or partners with local governments and the number of transactions and the dollar value, that's a pretty good indication, I think, of their services. Page, yes.
Were other firms considered? Was there RFP or?
Well, not at this point, just because of their familiarity, with the city. They just took us through this process in 2020, so, yeah.
But shouldn't we consider other?
That'll be a decision for the council. I'm not sure, that we have to do that, but yeah, we could do that, and if that's the wishes of the council, yeah. We were asked to get started, and I'm familiar with these people, they're familiar with us, so this was our way of, rather than starting a process, that can be can take quite some time to do that, and we can still do that, but, we elected to get some preliminary and initial information from these people, so, okay. I'll move on. You can see the information about the firm on those pages, up through page 8. If you look at page 9, they've been doing business in Tennessee since 1985. The last 2 years, 21 through 23, they did 64 debt transactions, $4.3 billion of debt in the state of Tennessee, and you can see some of their clients. Wanted to give you on page 11 just a couple of slides. I know there's a lot of interest in rates and the market and where it may be today and the direction it might be going in. This is kind of a graphical representation on slide 11 of where the yield on municipal debt has been so far this calendar year. I think the takeaway is that actually right now the rates today may be about 140 basis points or so higher than they were at the midpoint of the year. They're lower than they were earlier in the year. And you can see the bullet point up at the top that long-term rates remain at or below 30-year historical averages. So we'll have another couple of slides to help us look at that. On page 12, you can see this, just another representation. This, by the way, BVAL is the Bloomberg rating evaluation database is where this information comes from.
What are the numbers here at the bottom?
Which slide are you on?
On 11.
Those are weeks.
Weeks, okay.
Yeah, the year.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you can digest these numbers on where we are. I'm gonna give you some, on another slide here in a second, a little bit more specific information about where they think we would fall at this particular point in time. But, historically, from a historical perspective anyway, in recent years, we're all familiar with the low interest rates that we've had. Actually, now, as I mentioned earlier, if you look back past the recent years, kind of historical information, rates, as represented on this slide, are, I think they describe it as in line with historical averages. Now, moving forward, beginning on page, I guess it's the title page there, U.S. election implications in the municipal market. So the next few slides are information about, with this being an election year, about what maybe the elections have meant historically to rates. I think the important takeaway from the next few slides is the potential volatility of the impact of an election year on rates. And that's kind of in addition to the overall economy that, and I guess, I don't know if speculation is the right word, but I think what's the Fed going to do with rates, next month, and how that may impact, the economy overall, private debt, corporate debt, but certainly, municipal debt as well. So lots of volatility. They do point out in that first bullet point, or they suggest that in prior easing cycles, which that's what most people, I think we're heading in that direction, that municipal markets have been sustained periods of inflows. In other words, driving demand for municipal bonds. Now, this is just the representation of the advisors at PFM. They've sort of taken some scenarios of different outcomes of the election and what might happen as a result of that and why. So this is just their view of things, and it's just information for us to digest. Look, if you see on page 16, it talks about supply considerations. So you know, there's lots to consider and lots of factors that impact, the city's rate when it comes to debt. But certainly one of them is not only what's going on in the market, but the availability or the supply of municipal debt issues at a time that the city might be considering, you know, a particular debt issue. So they're sort of suggesting in that first bullet point that, you know, as the November 5th election date nears, pre-election bond market supply is likely to spike and then drop below historical averages for November and December potentially, so. And of course, when they talk about credit spreads in that second bullet point, and Ms. Enning, you could probably talk about this much more intelligently than I can, but whether you're talking about municipal debt, which is tax-free, right, to the investor, or versus private or corporate debt, which depending on the taxpayer situation, has a tax impact for them. The credit spread is, the way I understand it, basically my way of thinking about it, has to do with the difference between the different types of debt issue to the investor. So, historical rate movement post-elections. This is on page 17, and you can study these graphs. And, you know, and kind of get a history lesson maybe there, I'm not sure.
So, this is this is speculation?
Well, this is on page 17, this is what's happened historically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
But then this one is,
That's the supply.
it's a, you know, how many municipalities are
Okay.
are issued debt, yeah.
okay.
Right. I think that the key here, you know, on page 17 is, in that first bullet point, is the market volatility. You know, with a presidential or nationwide election, right, that contributes to it. Change in political leadership, parties, that historically has contributed to it. I think from our perspective, we just need to recognize the environment and the timing that we would be considering a debt issue. So, and we would, if we get to that point, we would have available to this group and the council, I guess, the advisors, that we would be paying to help us make the best decision that we could. Flipping ahead, page 19, I think this is the important, slide from my perspective, and this is just the work that we were asked to do that we've done to date, and this is just sort of a proposed timeline of where we are today. So I did want to take advantage of this meeting today with the Budget Committee. I would anticipate at the City Council work session and agenda, possibly the agenda meeting if it's on the agenda. You know, a similar update for the council. What is that, still a couple of weeks away, I think, or next Thursday, Friday. So with this particular timeline, would call for, at the September 3rd meeting, we do have an engagement letter from a proposed engagement letter from PFM. We have a proposed engagement letter from a bond counsel firm, Bass, Berry, Sims, that if we, you know, get the go-ahead and people are comfortable moving forward with where we are, we could consider those right at the September council meeting if that's what we decide to do. Then the month of September would be spent on financing preparation, due diligence, options, projects, et cetera, like a lot of hands-on work that would need to be much further along than it is now in order for the October meeting would be potentially where the council would consider the authorizing resolution for a debt issue, right, and potentially kind of an accompanying resolution that would approve the reimbursement concept of taking some of the debt proceeds and that we would have spent already on the homeless shelter, and then reimbursing the general fund from that. So that could potentially come at the October meeting, those particular resolutions. There are work that has to take place after those authorizing resolutions that have to, first off, there's a 20-day protest period that you have to allow after the authorizing resolution is approved, and then there's the actual, I guess, they refer to it as the draft financing documents, the offering statement, and lots of work like that would take place in the month of October. November, obtain a credit rating, finalize the financing plan, and then potentially close, potentially close in December. Now, they didn't spell it out in here on this particular timeline, but there's a process that we have to go through with the comptroller's office to actually get the debt proposed, that's proposed, approved by the comptroller's office. Now, I would reference you to the footnote at the bottom of page 19. Depending on the municipal market conditions, the city's financial advisor may recommend delaying the pricing or closing until early 2025. That's in reference to the unknowns about the election and the economy and the volatility and so forth. Yeah, and right, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Well, Bobby, if the rates drop in September, then is there an opportunity to lock in rates? I don't know if this applies in this case.
There's a process you have to go. I think after the process is complete, you would just, I think rather than locking in rates, kind of like you're doing a mortgage or something, you would just expedite to the extent that you can, the close process.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the
That would
amount
be
of
my
debt?
understanding.
I missed a couple of meetings. What's the amount of debt?
Well,
looking
good,
at?
yeah, very, very good question. So, right now, it's about, let's just for round numbers, but $15 million. So between 14 and 15, and kind of where that number comes from, Ms. Henning, is that, through our budget process, you know, we kind of a bottoms-up budget, right? So we look at the capital needs and requests from our directors and from the mayor's office. The mayor works on that number for a while, and make sure it's where it needs to be. But once we started presenting those numbers to this group and to the council, I think it was about $18 million worth of request, if I remember correctly. And of that $18 million, there was actually funding through carryover items from this prior year's capital budget, as well as grant funding for about $6 million. So in the budget that the council has already approved, there's about $6 million worth of capital projects, but $18 million was asked for. And so when things progressed to the point that we might entertain a debt issue, the mayor and his staff went back and looked. For instance, a good example might be, and Mayor, don't let me misspeak here, but I'm pretty sure in the original request that the thinking was maybe $3 million for street paving. Well, that was increased to $7 million. So started at 18, we funded 6, that got you down to 12. And when you took a closer look at items that we might want to include in a debt issue, we ended up right at $15 million. Now, I will say that there's finalizing those particular assets and the amounts and everything will kind of continue to be, you know, a work in process, right? Getting council on board on what all is included, but depending on the life of the assets that are financed, that has a real direct impact on the debt service, right? Both in terms of the length of the debt service. I think I have this right if I remember right. You may remember, but like the debt service on your debt cannot exceed 120%, I think. 120% of the useful life of the assets that you're financing, right? So depending on what the final list is and the life of those, impacts how much money you actually borrow. But to answer your question, right now, it's right at $15 million, so.
So we're basically October, November, and December in the process so that we have the funds in
Well,
January.
right
Well, you
now,
can be ready by
yeah,
January.
yeah, be
Okay.
ready, I mean,
There are comments as that, there may be advice coming down saying, depending on the election,
Mhm.
how things look, and push it out a couple of months. They can have everything ready to go, just say, let's hit the market a couple months later. My question is, considering how probably contentious borrowing $15 million will be, is there any wisdom to seek other proposals? I mean, I believe, PFM's a great, and they already got a head start,
yeah.
nothing against them, but is there any thought
Oh,
that?
That's strictly a mayor's office, council decision. I was asked
No,
to kind of take a look, and these people are very familiar with the city already. They're, as you described, you may be familiar with them too, Ms. Henny. They're a highly respected firm, so, and they're familiar with the city, so, that's kind of what.
And that's my point too, to Dr. Stewart and to Fancher's suggestion is that we place it out there for RFP. Because, I know at one time Morgan Keegan used to be one of the largest underwriters
Yeah.
of municipal debt in the state.
Well-
I'm not familiar with,
Yeah, well, they're not,
Not to say they're not a
they're
good
not
company.
underwriters now.
yeah.
They're the financial advisor. Matter of fact, they're the independent financial advisors.
Mhm,
The
mhm.
Morgan Keegans of the world and
Underwriters,
other
yeah.
people are actually underwriters.
Mhm.
That's not what we're doing here. This is
Right.
the financial advisory.
But
side.
I still agree we probably
Yeah,
should
yeah,
put this
yeah,
out for
yeah,
RFP.
so,
Would we need 2 readings of the council?
No, we can go ahead and, we can get together with purchasing and get the RFP out, and that way we could, get an RFP committee there and select it for the October meeting. We can't for the September meeting, if we're gonna put an RFP out, we obviously don't have the time to
Right.
present
Yeah.
a contract, by September, but we would have time, I think, for the October meeting.
Yeah, that's the downside, you lose your head start.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
one,
was just throwing that question out there.
Well, yeah, and fair question. No problem with the question. I just want you to understand, I was asked to get us this far.
That's what you have us for.
Yeah, I call the people that I know and know us for this, so,
so,
It's
Yeah.
probably better than even odds that they end up being.
yeah.
Bobby, one question that I have is, and I feel like we've asked this question a couple of different ways, but as it relates to municipal health, relates to whether it's balance sheet health, but I'm not smart enough to know the difference in the details, but I know there are metrics that we would evaluate a city on. What kind of debt capacity is a healthy
Yeah.
debt capacity, and where does this 15 million put us?
Yeah, we can bring that back. So we have some of that information already with, the metrics that we've shared with this, committee before. I'm, very confident we have debt capacity. I don't think there's any question about that. Actually, that debt capacity is some of the work, calculating that is some of the work that a financial advisor, whether it's PFM or someone else, actually does and demonstrates to potential investors, like, these people have the capacity to do this, as part of the offering statement and, that type of thing. Now, we do have a debt service, policy. I wish I'd brought that now.
Was it not
Well,
in the minutes?
it basically says that your annual debt service cannot exceed a certain percentage of your, property tax revenue. So our property tax revenue is, I don't know, $37 million, something like that, a year. And if I remember right, it's,
26 or 7%.
Is that in there or something?
26 or 27.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. So we'd have to comply with that, and I think we have room to comply with that. You all may recall that, our debt service requirements, dropped off or decreased, if you will. This budget year, or the new budget year, FY '25, so.
I just think it would be wise and prudent, in my opinion, to look at some other cities, just to get a sense of, I don't know, anytime you borrow this much money, there's gonna be a lot of people asking questions. And I think the more we can do to say, it might feel out of line, but here are some examples of other cities, preferably that would be respected cities, well-run cities, not the opposite. Right, I mean, so, anyway, because, I just think anytime we start doing things that don't translate into a normal household budget, you know, the idea of borrowing $15 million, very few people, in our city have ever done that. And so I just think the more that we can make it appear more normal than it feels, I think the better off this
Yeah,
will
well,
be.
I certainly agree with you.
Yeah.
I would point out, though, that most families in our community don't pay cash for their house. They have a mortgage, nor do they pay cash for their vehicle
That's
or
true.
major repairs. And I think what you would find is that, most, cities that would be viewed to be financially responsible, right? I think what you're gonna find is that, most of them do, have debt issues, for financing capital assets, particularly infrastructure and road improvements and assets, any buildings that may be in there, assets that have a life, a useful life that is above a certain period. And part of that, Dave, actually is the idea, the concept that you don't want to burden,
On the
current property taxpayers unnecessarily for assets that future taxpayers 15 years from now are gonna be reaping the benefits from or whatever. So there's a lot goes into that. And, but that's a really good point. And we can certainly pull some of that information. And as I mentioned earlier, that's part of the services of the financial, advisory firm. And, you know, they'll produce, it's called an offering statement. You guys may have seen it before. It's a little book about what the city, who the city is and what they want to do. And that'll be distributed to potential individual investors, underwriters that might want to purchase the bonds. So all that's part of that process to demonstrate what you're asking about.
So as we go into this new budget, is there any point that we become a little cash strapped, perhaps?
Well, from a capital standpoint,
Or from
Well-
just general cash flow.
You know, we're both of those.
well, as I mentioned earlier, specific to the $6 million or so that's in the capital budget for this year, we have funding for that, right? Either it's, I didn't bring all that with me, but
Well, we talked about it.
if you
during
look at the projected ending fund balance in the capital outlay fund, I don't know, there's $3 or $3.5 million or something that represents projects that were approved in the past, right? And have been encumbered. We've either issued purchase orders or signed a contract or something for those particular funds. So those funds carry over. And then there were some TDOT projects that are in there that had grant funding.
Yeah, so everything in our capital budget that is funded for has dollars that go with it.
Right.
So everything else that we're talking about, this debt issuance is not included in the current capital budget. It's in the spreadsheet of what the plan is, but it was not what the council voted on as far as the budget.
That's right.
Okay. Okay. I didn't know if any increases in the budget, we're starting to spend those and would create a little
Well,
financial.
yeah, of course, the budget was funded, right? You cannot pass a budget that doesn't balance or is not funded right now. And you know, there are seasonal cash flows issues with the city. For instance, on property tax, well, we get almost, I don't know, over a third of our annual revenue, you know, we'll collect that, hopefully, October, November, and December. So, yeah, so there are, but, I think we're fine.
Okay,
But,
that's good.
now, you know, this report would suggest we're off to a good start on our revenues, and we'll have to monitor that, and we have a history of staying within our expense budget, and so we'll need to monitor that as well, so.
One of the questions I had, Bobby, is as part of this, whether it's the offering statement or just the part that's being discussed and,
Right.
and voted on,
Right.
is there going to be a list of specific projects
Yeah, oh, yeah.
that the debt issue ties back to?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's, actually, this is it right here. And the council members have this already, and again, this is the, what started out as,
32 million.
yeah, 30 million, whatever, got down to 18 million that we were gonna try to fund, and what we did, we reduced that 18 million to the 6 million that we had funding for, right? Leaving the 12 million that was kind of unfunded, and then, in looking at these assets, you know, the mayor thought we should put some more funding, for instance, in street resurfacing. So, so the number got up from 12 million back up to about 15 million. around there.
What's the time frame that we're looking at for the debt service in terms of the length of it?
Depends on the asset. You don't know how long, like how many years? Yeah,
Right,
sorry. Yeah, that depends on our existing debt service and the remaining useful life on our years requiring debt service. And then it depends on the asset, the asset life of what we borrow, right? And, you know, in some cities,
Right, and that's what these folks are gonna be for.
Yeah, that's what
They're
they're
gonna
for.
take that list and say, all right, if you borrow,
Yeah.
this is what that debt service needs to look
Yeah.
like.
okay.
Most cities strive toward level funding of their debt service, right? So the debt service on the new issue would kind of be incorporated into the debt service schedules that we kind of already have in such a way that you hopefully end up with kind of level debt service. Like now, I believe our debt is fully retired in 2038, maybe, or something like that. So, but they'll look at that, and, now some cities elect to front load their debt. I mean, you know, I don't know, they got a funding plan to retire early or something, I don't really know. Most cities it's level, would not recommend backloading the debt, right? So you don't really wanna do that, but that's what the PFMs of the world would help us do, so, yeah. That's, just
Anything
wanted
else?
to give you an update of where we are, so.
This is very helpful. And so do we need to recommend anything to the city council at some point?
Well, I think, your recommendation as the committee was RFP, so we'll get working on that, and that way we can have that presented hopefully to council by October.
Okay. Any other business we need to bring before this group? Motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Sure.
Walk out and leave.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
I'm good, how are you?